Hello everyone and welcome to another video and what is another episode of playing a game on a graphics card that costs less than the game itself. Now usually for these videos we use an RX 570, one that I picked up for £49 here in the UK because it's usually cheaper than the PC games I buy. However, today we're testing Arc Raiders and this is only £30.99 currently on Steam. Now, of course, we need a card that's cheaper than this, and so this is what I have ended up with instead. It's still a 4GB GPU, but this is the R9 380X. It's actually a couple of years older than the RX 570, so how well is it going to do? Well, as you can see, drivers are already outdated, so I'm not expecting much here, and when I went to fire up the game, surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, we did get a driver warning, but after a couple of moments, and after I had basically clicked ignore, the game fired up just fine. This is running on Unreal Engine 5, so I wasn't exactly expecting much here. Is Arc Raiders actually playable on a card that cost me £30.95 here in the UK, including postage, 4 pence cheaper than the actual game on Steam itself? So of course I started with all of the settings set to their respective lowest. I did however maintain 1080p resolution throughout the entirety of this video, albeit with some upscaling later on. So we have 1080p here, everything set to low or off. The ray tracing option is obviously greyed out. I'm just honestly quite impressed that we've made it this far. If we jump into the game with native mode, with AA switched off, this is really early on, but we're actually getting almost 50 FPS. We'll move on to an open world scenario a little later on, but this is just an example of the game running here. Of course the R9 380X is maxed out. I've paired it with an i5 12400F, which is sitting back relaxing today. This isn't going to have any issues with this title. Now I want to cycle through a few of the upscaling options. As you can see, we currently have no AA selected, but if we want to, we can choose between FSR or TAAU we'll start with here. I actually set this to 59% to match FSR3 balance because we'll run through a few comparisons. So TAAU with 59% upscaling is going to get us over 60 FPS. TSR, it's a similar situation, a slight drop in performance however. FSR3 at the aforementioned 59% to match that of the results you've just seen, just under 60 FPS. And XeSS from Intel, well, this is a no-go. This is going to completely break the game. Yeah, it's an absolute disaster. Not only that, but we've dropped to less than 20 frames per second. So XeSS is best ignored. So here we are then, in the game itself. We've passed the initial, tutorial level here. I want to just run through a few of the texture settings. Obviously we are limited to low with basically everything with an R9 380X. We could turn things up if we want to, but I'm going to show you that it doesn't really make a difference. The 4GB VRAM limitation is basically going to set the texture settings for us. It's going to prevent us from making the most of the visual quality, as you can see here. It could either be that or it could be the outdated drivers, which we can't do anything about. But yeah, whether we choose low, medium or high for the texture quality, it's going to look like, well, this anyway. Reminds me of playing Halo Infinite, I believe it was, on a 1063 gig years ago. All the trees and that wouldn't load. I mean, they did eventually, but here, yeah, it gets worse if anything. So we're currently running with the lowest settings, no AA selected here, everything at its respective lowest, as you can see. Now I'm not complaining, to be honest, I'm actually quite pleased that we can run and enjoy the game. There's nothing here stopping me from having a fun online experience. Sure, it doesn't look the best, but if I bought an R9 380X for 30 quid with the intention to play Arc Raiders, and I was able to play it, albeit like this visually, I'd be pretty happy. If this was my only GPU and I really wanted to play this game, I honestly wouldn't be complaining this much. Honestly, I take my hat off to the developers here for doing a really good job, it seems, with optimization. I can't comment on other hardware. This is the first GPU that I've actually tested, but very surprised here, a UE5 game running on a card that's 10 years old and running well. I bet none of you expected that when you clicked on this video. You may have expected 20 FPS. Me, myself, am guilty of that. But yeah, you can see the VRAM pretty much being maxed out here, hence the texture issues, but we can see it in the on-screen overlay as well. This card only clocks up to 980 megahertz. I thought this was a problem, but when I looked into it, it's just an old card. So yeah, we may be able to overclock it a little bit, but that's not going to help us, especially considering the outdated driver support, or lack of driver support, and the limited VRAM. So we'll move on to a slightly different gameplay scenario here. No matter where you are on the map or what you're doing, it's going to be pretty hard to achieve a consistent 60 FPS with this ancient card using the native resolution option. But again, I'm just happy with plus 30 FPS to be honest. We could crank a few things up, I guess, but honestly I don't think it's worth it considering the occasional dips and drops that we do get. I think it's just best to keep things at low and enjoy the experience for what it is on this aging GPU. Now that said, there will actually be moments where we do see at least 60 frames per second, 70 sometimes, especially in those indoor zones. Bad weather will take its toll a little bit on frame rate here. It's raining and I wanted to show you this because this drops the frame rate by about 5 or 6 FPS. It's still enough to maintain at least 30, in fact we're seeing at least 40 most of the time. And overall our average is still pretty decent. I just took an average of my gameplay session in its entirety today, and that's what you're going to see on screen. But this is another reason why I just suggest leaving everything at its respective lowest to account for some of the more intensive in-game areas and weather like this. It's going to take its toll a little bit on the performance, but yeah, it's still playable in my opinion. We'll play around with the best of the upscaling options now, which I believe was TAAU, to see if we can hit at least 60 FPS. So TAAU was the best option that we discovered in terms of upscaling at the start of the video. This time, however, I've set it to 70%, 1344 by 756. Honestly, it doesn't look too bad at all. We're seeing at least 80 FPS in this area. This will drop, of course. The average is going to be somewhere around 60. At least that's what I found from my gameplay session, which lasted a couple of hours today. As with before, there will be a few dips and drops towards 40, 50 FPS. Look at the trees. They're like just one multicoloured texture, a bit of green and a bit of brown. They look okay in the distance. Now, of course, I've just been running around doing, well, not much, just exploring the map, looking for loot, things like that. I'm sure when the action heats up a bit, this frame rate will drop along with the frame times, but my initial impressions of Arc Raiders, at least, is that it seems to be very well optimized, and you can even play it on a graphics card that you can pick up for less than the game. I got this from CEX. It was £28 with $2.95 delivery at the time of purchase about last week, so £30.95 in total. The game cost me £30.99 on Steam, so 4p less than the game is what the graphics card cost, and I think I'm definitely getting £30 worth of performance from it. As I said though, not sure how different areas of the map, different situations are going to impact performance, but from what I've seen so far, yeah, can't complain. It would be interesting to see how integrated graphics handle this, and that is certainly something that we shall be testing. Should you guys want to see that, maybe we'll throw the Athlon 3000G in the path of this game and see what happens. Will the 2-core 4-thread APU with its Vega 3 graphics be able to handle it with at least 30 FPS? Well, I'm sure there's going to be some huge sacrifices, but we'll have to check that out. As for this one though, Arc Raiders on a card that costs less than the game, well, it's an intriguing result and not one I expected, but let me know your thoughts down below. Not the best visually, as I'm sure we can all agree, but thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.